Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So, today we're starting a new topic on the whole concept of Nasara. Nasara are typically known to be the word for Christians in the Quran, and it's often used today as well. But today we're going to look at why this doesn't seem to be the case, just based on how this word is used, how this Arabic root is used in the Quran. And let's just get right into it. So if you haven't watched my series so far on the Yahud, alladina hadu, basically the Qur'anic Jews, quote unquote, in the Quran, then I suggest you do watch that just so you get a bit of context. So this one makes even more sense. But basically what we see here is, this is just going to be an introduction to the concept that Nasara doesn't actually mean Christian. And what we're going to do is look at official history as well as verses from the Quran. But mainly we're going to look at what the words related to this root for Nasara actually mean. So Nasara is based on an Arabic trilateral root that involves Nun, Sad, and Ra, Nasara. And as you can imagine, it has something to do with victory and triumph and supporting and helping, as well as some kind of armed struggle. So with this context, we can see that Christian is really the definition that's the odd one out. So when we looked at Yahud, Hudan, alladina hadu, the words that are based off the root ha wa nun, hawada, huda, we see that the term for Jew is the odd one out because it doesn't fit the overall meaning of this root. And there is kind of a problem with that one as well because, again, you're talking about the universality of the Quran applying somehow mainly to a very tiny population of people known as Jews today. For the Nasara, we have pretty much the same problem. There are a lot of Christians in the world, but again, the Quran is not going to invalidate itself by focusing on a select group of people when it can easily encompass that in a broader category that involves Buddhists, that involves Hindus, that involves Zoroastrians, all kinds of different people. And what we see here is this root gives us an idea of who is involved in this category today. Okay, so I'm not saying that Christians couldn't be called Nasara, but what I am saying is that Nasara seems to be not exclusive to Christians. And of course, Christians, many peoples today within religion and outside of religion can be included in this broader universal category. So again, just like Yahud, Nasara are a general tendency of a subset of mankind towards a path that predates official Christian history. I'm going to show you even the same word and some of these similar type of monastic rituals, they actually do predate the official birth of Jesus Christ. Okay? The first red flag that we can see is that today in Arabic, Christians are not even called Nasara. In fact, they're actually called Masihiyun. Masihi is a Christian. And this makes a lot of sense because Christ and Messiah are known to be synonymous between Greek and Semitic languages. But Nasara, it doesn't mean has the word Christ in there at all. Rather, what we're going to see is this refers to a location called Nazareth and people called Nazarenes. But there's a problem there because you don't actually have to be a Christian to be from that area. There are many Jews that probably live in that area today. Or Muslims, the Palestinian Muslims, they tend to live in places that Jesus is told to have occupied during his ministry in the Bible. So it's, first of all, inaccurate, and second of all, it's not even used in colloquial Arabic today. So Masih refers to what most people would say Messiah or Christ. And so, of course, every single person that's Masihi is a Christian by just common vernacular today. Nazarene is just a vaguely similar sounding word to the Qur'anic Nasara. And what you're going to notice is this is actually kind of forcibly put as a definition when it's not necessary, because this is talking about a specific region in the Middle East, a very specific region in the Middle East, that basically has no sway or no influence in the world today. It doesn't actually have much of an impact at all. And I'm going to show you later that it's actually impossible, if you believe in the Quran as the word of God, it's impossible for you to believe that Maryam and Isa, their entire story, actually takes place in Nazareth, in Palestine, and Israel today. Okay? So we have no evidence of a place called Nazareth or Nazarene sect from the Quran. But what we do see is these places are definitely related in some way to the concept that we would call Nasara today. It's just the other way around. So Nasara has everything to do with victory, triumph, and the process of attaining it. And we're going to look at each word. So these are the list. This is the list of words that are used in the Quran from the same root. And this root is used quite a bit throughout the Quran. So it'd be surprising if this applied only to Christians, which it can't. So tansur, to support. Tanasar, to support each other. Intasar, to triumph. Istansar, to request support. Nasr, victory. This is actually a chapter in the Quran, one of the chapters many people memorize because it's only 3 verses long. And An-Nasr, Nasrallah. Okay, this is related to victory, the victory of God. Nasrani, Nasara. You're going to find out that one of the best terms that, I myself can come up with, or I do implore all kinds of collaboration in this regard, but one of the best ways I can translate this word, Nasrani, Nasara, is partisans. And we're going to look at what partisan means. It's something that's used in politics today, all the time. Similar to how progress is used on the flip side of the coin called Yahud, Nasara, or Yahud and Hudan and Alladina Hadu. Okay? Nasir, Nusra, champion or champions. Nasr, Ansar, Nasirin, supporter, adherents, supporters. These are just related words that are used throughout the Quran. Mansur, a victor. Muntasir, triumphant one. So, something that I want to point out is we have a story in the Quran where Maryam, the mother of Isa, she actually is mentioned in the Quran in chapter 19, verse 16, that she withdraws from her family toward a place toward the east, Sharqiyan, an easterly place. Okay? And what basically happens is, at some point, she sees an angel. Okay? But it's basically the spirit, okay? Ruhna, which most people identify this as the angel Jibreel, the Ruh al-Qudus. And basically, the angel explains to her that you are going to be given a child, and this child is not conceived whatsoever by yourself or any man, but it's meant to be as a sign for mankind, and it's a matter that's already decreed. So she conceived him in this place toward the east that she eventually reached, And then she takes him to another place that's very distant and gives birth to him. Okay? But I want to highlight that the Quran is very clear that she's taken to a place toward the east. Okay? Makanan sharqiyan. And she leaves her family, right? What we see today is they have set up a story that basically is in conflict and contradicts this account from the Quran. Why? Well, you can look for yourself, but Maryam officially is a native of Nazareth. Okay? So you can see on the map here we have Nazareth in the north of Palestine in the region of Galilee. Okay? And basically we know from the history that Bethlehem is the place where Jesus was born. This is the whole nativity story, okay? And you can see Bethlehem in Judea, all the way south. So the question is, if we're to believe in the biblical story, yet the Quran says that Maryam went a place to the east, how then can we even accept the account from the Bible that Isa was born in Bethlehem and his mother is from Galilee, specifically Nazareth? We can't. They're at odds with each other. Because as you can see, Bethlehem is actually slightly west and almost completely south of Nazareth. This is in direct conflict with the Quran. So what that tells you is Maryam, the story of Maryam is completely fabricated from the Bible. In fact, the geography doesn't match what the Quran is saying. And anyone can just show this to be the case. We also have a story as well that Maryam is related to, has some kind of a travel to Egypt. And the reason why is because she travels with Joseph and the infant Jesus to flee the killing of all the firstborn sons the kingdom of Judea at the time under King Herod. And so she goes to Egypt to evade that, for some time, to evade that massacre of the innocents mentioned in the New Testament. That is exactly the opposite direction that we know Maryam has taken. Now, of course, it's not mentioned, obviously, because she's going there with her already born child, right? But again, you have to show that the Bible's topography and geography of the events of what we assume are the same characters in the Quran is completely at odds with the Quran. She goes south on the map when Allah says she goes towards the east, okay, to conceive him, and of course later on to give birth to him. So that's something I just wanted to point out. So when we look at this root of nasara, okay, we see that it refers to assistance, aid, help, to help someone against another person in the context of a war or a struggle or a battle or some kind of a conflict. Nasara is related to triumph and victory, and all of the words from it are related to some kind of an armed conflict and maybe even a spiritual conflict as well. So we see that Nasir refers to a supporter or a helper. Supporter, I find, is very accurate for this word or this root, because helper doesn't really give you much of a context as to what's going on. You know, you can help someone for anything, but in this particular context with Nasr, victory, triumph, you're talking about a conflict, basically. Okay, Nasir, protector. And now we have Nasir, okay? Nasirun, Ansar, Nussar, adherents, followers, partisans, sponsors, patrons, friends. So Ansar, we know, are the followers of the Prophet Muhammad, okay? So in a sense, we have a commonality between the Prophet Muhammad's followers in history, and Christians. Okay, I'll get into what the Ansar is in another part, but first I want to show you that Nasara does not include Christians. The reason why is there is no mention of Christ in the term, and it has to fit within the greater context of a people that are separating themselves from the prevailing world power. Okay? We see in the Yahud series that these people are more tyrannical, and what we'll see in the Nasara series is these people are more rebellious. Okay? There's always two sides of the same coin. There's a mainstream narrative and there's an alternative narrative. Okay? So these people are defined in their lives by some kind of a revolutionary mindset, some kind of a resistance mindset. Most of the resistance groups come from this Eastern type of cultural part of the world. And again, you can't really put geographic boundaries on it, but this is just some kind of a pattern that happens to be there. This word is mentioned very often with idolatry. When Ibrahim's people, they say, Ansuru il alihatikum, support your gods. And I'm going to show you where that's the case. Okay. So Nasiri is someone from Nazareth or a Nazarene, in Galilee where I showed you. But what do we see here is Nasir. So Nasiriya is someone who is Nasir. Okay, Nasir, Nasiriya, a person pertaining to this concept, right? So Falak is a celestial object, for example, right? And Falakiya is astronomy. So this is a concept, something that is created around the concept of partisanship. Okay, adhering to a group that is splitting from what? The Yahud. This is their mortal enemy, supposedly, right? And this is what we see replete not just with the Christian religion, but we see this with every religion. There is some kind of a schism that takes place. And these people are the ones that branch off during this schism from the larger body or the kind of sister culture that holds sway in the world. Okay? You can see this throughout the history. It's been copied so many times. So, Mansur, a person that's a victor, supported by God, victorious, triumphant. This has something to do with war, obviously, right? Nasr, victory, triumph. You can see that Qaus Nasr is an arch or a bow that's triumphant, arch, a triumphal arch, like you see in Paris and other countries. Nasrani is a Christian. Okay. Again, Nasr, Nasran, that's related to victory. Okay. These people are always in pursuit of triumph and victory. They are relentless when it comes to this. They will martyr themselves in this regard. Okay. And I may have already exposed who this pertains to mainly in the world, but we'll get to that. Nusra, help, assistance, support. Again, you see the word support in there. Defense of the oppressed, support of the oppressed, right? These people are usually oppressed and downtrodden in the world by the Yahud, by the people that hold the tyranny, who do the dholam in the world. Okay, oppression. Adherent, nasir, follower, partisan. There we see those words again. Okay, nasir, patron, promoter. We see that awliya are used as their idols, right? Patrons. They're patron gods. The Alawite sect is also related to this. Okay, and the Alawites, I mean, they're the ones who believe that Ali ibn Abi Talib, this character in Islam, is actually divine in the flesh. Okay, like a divine presence of God. Astaghfirullah. Okay, very similar to what we see around Nasara. So it's no coincidence that their founder was called Ibn Nusayr. Okay, Nusayri. These all have to be related under an umbrella concept. That's how the Arabic language works. nassara, to Christianize or baptize. Now remember, baptism involves washing yourself with water. Okay? So think about, for example, many religions do this, obviously, but some of them do it way more than others. Okay? Perhaps even 5 times a day. So when you go to nasara, support, aid, assistance, okay, notice it can be to support a belief, like a belief that is idolatry. Support your gods, support your idols, support your statues. Okay? Munasir, supporter, adherent, follower. You get the idea. To become a Christian is exactly the same word to support. Tanassara. You can see it right there. To help, to aid, to assist, to support your allies against the enemy, right? Is the same word to become a Christian. This is what we said for Yahud, for Hudan, alladhina hadu. The ones who progressed, the ones who are moving about slowly, who are lenient, who are lax and complacent, is the same word to become Jewish. To proceed slowly is to become Jewish. You see? They just had to put it in there because now the modern definition demands that these are associated with these two religions when they're not in the Quran. There's no need for them to be. It actually limits the cosmic order of Allah to politics, essentially. Cannot be like that. Intasara, to come to someone's aid, like in a war, to stand up or maintain something. So these people are very tied to tradition. Very tied to tradition. Whereas the Yahud are very tied to the opposite, to modernism, to leaving it, setting aside, crossing those traditional lines. Okay, that's why they're natural enemies, and we'll see later on what that transpires in. Intasara, to gain a victory or a triumph over, to take revenge. We have intisar is a victory. Okay, muntasir, victorious, triumphant. Muntasir, victor. Istansara, to ask for assistance or support or help. Alright? So you get the idea. There's nothing that this should be littered with some Christian ideals, but it's not. And in fact, the Christian definition is redundant. So here we see from this root in the Quran, unsuru. Where is this word used? Support. It's used only one time. They translate it as support. And notice sometimes they'll put give us victory. Ansurna. Yansurkum. Okay? To help you. To give you victory, help you. And then one time they see it as support. And what does it say here? It says they said burn him. حرقوه وأنصروا آلهتكم إن كنتم فاعلين. They said burn him, Ibrahim, and support your gods if you are to act. Now I already mentioned in part 2 of my series on the Jews on my channel that Nasara and Yahud are ultimately offshoots of the religion of the people of Ibrahim. So that means they have a satanic origin. Why? Because you can watch the video obviously, but basically Ibrahim tells his people there has appeared between us and you the animosity and the hatred, enmity and hatred forever. And these two things are used for two people in the Quran, two groups of people. Al-Yahud and الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَحْنَ نَصَارَى. Those people, those who say we are Christians. Notice how they have to say that, because they're very proud people. They're very much proud of their traditions, and they are willing to burn prophets of God like Ibrahim who go against them. So these traits, these genetic traits, have now poured over into two different sects, okay, two different factions of the descendants of the people of Ibrahim. Okay? So we see obviously it means to support or help one another, to defend somebody. Here we see Nasr is used interchangeably with help and victory, God's victory. Okay? It's a neutral term. It has to be a neutral term because there are believers from these groups. Believers from Alladina Hadu, believers from An-Nasara. Okay? An-Nasara is very, very attached to identity. That's who these people are attached to. They have an identity and they are very strongly rooted in an identity. Alladina Hadu, they don't care about that. It's all about actions to them. What you can do in this life, what you can get away with in this life. They're not tied down by tradition. They're modernizing. Okay? So of course this is universal. This is just makes sense. It's a symmetrical, universal understanding that Allah has put in the cosmic order for humanity. Okay? So these are all Christians, right? But if you just replace this with partisan, okay? Look, Ibrahim was neither Yahudiyan wala Nasraniyan. He was neither a person of progress or he was neither a partisan. He was in the middle, inclining towards truth. Hanifan Musliman. And he was not from the mushrikeen. Okay? It's anyone's guess why al-mushrikeen are put in there. But like I suggested in my other video, I believe that mushrikeen tend to exemplify the Nasara way, way more than the Yahud. Why? Because the Yahud, alladhina hadu, hudan, they are related more to kufr. Okay? Kufr is compared with shirk, right? So that's why I think he was not from the mushrikeen. And it uses an identity there because Nasara are limited to an identity. That's their base starting point, right? And we'll get into Nasara in the next video, inshallah. Okay, so you can see that Nasir refers to a helper, supporter. I likened it to a champion, someone who's your champion, right? Send us a champion, right? This is what the oppressed people say. Send to us a champion to help us, right? Nasiran. Allah is called An-Nasir. You see, وَنَعْمَ النَّصِيرُ. Excellent is your Mawla. وَنَعْمَ النَّصِيرُ. Right? Allah is your protector. Allah is your helper. Allah is your champion. That's what the victory of God implies. The people of God have Allah as their champion, and He will send them whoever they need amongst humans, such as the prophets, such as the messengers, such as the angels, to help them. Here we have another reference to Allah. So this is a neutral term, okay? Nasirin. You see, وَهُوَ خَيْرُ النَّاصِرِينَ. He's the best of the champions, okay? Nasirin, the best of supporters, the best of adherents. You see, the best of... So what you see here, mansuran, helped. So they like to use the word helped everywhere. But there are other words in Arabic for help. Like in general, when you help somebody outside the context of a conflict, right? There are other words for that, right? Ma'dad, for example, help me, okay? So yeah, basically when you look at this verse, so do not kill a soul which Allah has sanctioned or forbidden, except by the truth, and whoever is killed wrongfully, surely we have made his heir, given his heir authority, but do not exceed in the killing. Indeed, it was mansuran wala taqrabu mala yatima. So basically this is just to introduce the idea that Christianity is irrelevant in understanding what Nasara means, okay? Now, interesting here that they put partisan as Nasir. So this is something that is related to this root. And what does a partisan mean? A strong supporter of a party, cause, or person. For example, today, in the Middle East, you hear a lot in the news, Hassan Nasrallah, Hezb Allah. Have you ever heard of these terms? The party of God, he's led by someone called Victor of God, right? Where does this happen in the West? Barely anywhere. I mean, these people have been a broad category of human psychology that are mainly in the East. That's where it holds the largest sway, it seems like. Okay? So this is a supporter, a follower, adherent, devotee, champion. Even the religions in the East are filled with devotees and disciples, right? Backers, promoters, fanatics, zealots, janissaries, sectaries, cohorts, freedom fighters, guerrilla freedom fighters. Someone that is prejudiced in favor of a particular cause, a faction, sectarian, bigoted, prejudiced, biased, okay? Discriminatory, preferential. It refers to somebody who creates a part of something bigger. That's usually what it means, okay? So of course, when we look at the root for nasara, we see it means to support, to grant victory, okay? And they have put this in here to mean Christians. But then they even say as if from the root relating to aiding or assisting. Most Christians throughout history have had a problem with the Muslims, meaning somebody that follows the Qur'an. If you look at official history, the people fighting them are Christians, like the Crusades, like the Inquisition, okay, like the colonial empires as well, right? And then when we see the yunassiru, to Christianize, convert someone to Christianity, we've already seen it doesn't have to be Christianize or baptize, all right? Then we look at Nasrani. Now, this actually relates to Nazareth, not Christian. Christian is Masihi. So this is a Hebraic, Aramaic, so this is a Hebrew definition for Christian. And it doesn't even mean that in Hebrew, but that's what they use commonly in Hebrew today. So Nasrani is what they use in Hebrew to mean Christian. But in Arabic, it's Masihi. You can see here, Masihi, right? So Masihi comes from Christ, Mashiach. I don't want to get into defining that just yet. We'll have to make that another video, inshallah. But this is the word used for Christian. Nobody rarely uses Nasara. So they have made Nasara Christian because of the Quran, even though the Quran doesn't even hint that this means Christian. Okay? So, yes, person who is a Christian or Nazarene. So a resident of Nazareth doesn't have to be a Christian. And Nazareth is not even a place in the Quran, because I just told you how Maryam could not have possibly lived in Nazareth if she conceived Jesus towards the east. And Bethlehem is towards the south today. Okay? Hebrew Natsrut means Christianity. So Nazareth is derived from one of the Hebrew words for branching. Isn't that interesting? This is a branching group. It's a branching off from the main thing. That's literally what a partisan is. Somebody who branches off, like a separatist. Okay? Namely Natsar, and alludes to the prophetic messianic words from roots a branch will bear fruit. Alternatively, the name may derive from the verb natsar, to watch, guard, or keep. So this is something to do with protecting or preserving. Now, I believe that this could also bleed into the Arabic root nadhar, which is related to making a vow, related to warning, okay, just conveying a warning to a nation. But even that seems to work as well, because nasra means to support, to show protection, support, or help somebody in a conflict, right? So when we go to Nazarene, we see that this was the earliest sect of Christianity. They were a Jewish Christian sect. And at the time, it just simply designated followers of Jesus of Nazareth. But this cannot apply today in any sense. And they have to make it followers of Jesus of Nazareth, because basically the Nasara are actually related. That root is actually related to the story of Isa. But it cannot simply mean Christians, again, because it would exclude so much from the Quranic account. And when you look at also, there's this concept of Nazarites. Okay, this is the same word, Natsar, Natsir. Okay, it's a man or woman who voluntarily took a vow which in Arabic is related to the root nadhara, right? Isn't this interesting? These vows, they take a vow verbally, and these vows involve abstaining from wine or alcohol. They basically refrain from cutting the hair on his head, okay, and not to become ritually impure by contact with corpses or graves. And there's also a specific animal sacrifice, and along with the sacrifice, their heads are shaved. So Nazarite comes from the Hebrew word to mean consecrated or separated. Again, separation is involved with what? Nasara, separatist, somebody that's a partisan. It's splitting off or branching off from the main body, as sort of a kind of resistance group, right? And it may ultimately be derived from the Hebrew word nadar, which comes from Arabic nadar, a warner, or someone who takes a pledge of allegiance, which you would have to do in a conflict setting, right? So this predates Christianity. This predates the birth of Jesus Christ in the New Testament. And it was the Israelites became Nazarenes through an intentional verbal declaration, okay? So they make their own shahada to enter this vow, this pledge, okay? And they will go to their house of worship. They will bring sacrificial offerings of animals, such as a goat or a sheep or a ram, and they will shave their head in the outer courtyard of the temple or the house of God. Doesn't that sound familiar to a religion in the world today? Okay, remember, these are Nazarenes, Nazarites, Nazarenes, Nazareths, Nasara, okay? They also must abstain from all alcohol, okay? Sometimes they will even go further than that, because these people tend to be very extreme, and they will actually not even consume any grapes. They will not consume any vinegar, even though they're not alcoholic, okay? Some religions in the world prohibit you to cut your hair. And funny enough, in the Old Testament, we do have this sect of followers that believe in God, and they have their own rituals. They're very ritualistic, these Nazarites. They refrain from cutting the hair of their head. And then when they offer when they do sacrificial offerings, they shave their head. Okay? I'm not saying that this is not incorrect. I'm just trying to show you some connections with what you observe today, because officially these people don't exist anymore. Okay? A permanent Nazarite becomes ritually impure through proximity to a corpse. So imagine this. They come into contact with something najas, all right? And there's a process of purification, ritual purification, because they are just completely paranoid about coming into contact with something that is impure. Remember, the word nasara is related to baptizing, which refers to washing with water, baptizing. Okay? Now, if they have a skin disease, they are obliged to cut their hair. Okay? Now, the beard is also part of your hair, right? They probably wouldn't cut their beards either. And there are religions in the world, major religions, that advise their followers, do not cut your beard. And sometimes, they'll make an exception. If you have a skin disease, you can actually trim your beard. But other than that, they oblige them to not cut the hairs of their beard, which is part of the hairs of your head, right? There is a huge amount of monasticism in this idea of Nazarite, Nazarene, Nasara. And we will see some kind of connection to this as well in a future video. So basically, there is some idea that they receive this kind of a reproach to life from Jesus in the New Testament, in the Gospels. Jesus says in Mark, the chapter 14:22, "Verily I say unto you, I will drink no more of the fruit of the vine until that day that I drink it new in the kingdom of God." Okay? He abstained from alcohol after this vow. And then in Luke, what we see is the angel that announces the birth of John the Baptist, who Muslims call Yahya today, but Christians call Yohanan, foretells that he shall be great in the sight of the Lord, and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink. He shall be filled with the Holy Ghost, even from his mother's womb. In other words, a Nazarite from birth. There are people that have basically made monasticism within these kinds of Eastern approaches to religions, that's also known as asceticism. And they don't drink alcohol. They have a very strict diet protocol. And they abstain from any relations with women as well. They do not free mix. They do not have any kind of free association with women. Sometimes their entire lives. We even know that there are some scholars in Islam that never got married whatsoever. And they spent most of their days praying and fasting. Ritual worship. James, the brother of Jesus, the bishop of Jerusalem, was a Nazarite and performed with rigorous exactness all the practices enjoined by that rule of life. So you can see that what we call Christians at the time of Jesus are actually these Nasrim, right? This is the word in Hebrew for Nasara. This doesn't mean they are Christians today. They are the original followers of Jesus Christ. In Acts 24:5, there was an accusation that Paul was the ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. And basically, this provides further verification that the term Nazarene was a mistranslation of the term Nazarite. So they're interchangeable when you look through the New Testament and the Old Testament. And this is something that the Qur'an is elucidating. It's lifting this old definition of what this refers to. There are many religions in the world that have sprung from these people that are referenced in the Bible. And notice they're related to Beni Israel. Okay? Josephus mentions Nazarites, the taking a vow. Remember, it's verbal. They abstain from alcohol and they shave the hair of their head. Okay? Then we have Syriac Christianity, suggesting that the vines of paradise rush out to meet only those ascetics. So people that are like Sufis, people that do like this kind of monastic extrication from modern society to meditate, to reflect on God without, in nature. Very similar to monks, very similar to gurus, okay? Very similar to Sufi peers and all this. They lead a life of virginity and abstain from wine. Do Christians abstain from wine? No, not at all. Even Jews don't abstain from wine. I wonder which religion abstains from alcohol. John the Solitary refers to John the Baptist for a model of fasting in the 5th century. Who are the people that fast in the world? Who are the people that do vows constantly, pray constantly, okay? Who focus everything on the traditions of their ancestors, okay? And basically what we're going to see is have made the most prolific version, almost an epitome of what Nasara means in the Quran. So yunzir refers to vowing. Okay, it's also anzir, a warning, harboring, foreboding, heralding, notifying. Okay, and this is associated with these people. Okay, you make a pledge of allegiance. So that's everything I have for this part. I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll continue this discussion in part 2. Peace.